So Riley was 17 years old when he was hit by a car and suffered significant life-threatening injuries. After hitting Riley with the car, the driver got out of it, went back and assaulted Riley again before driving away and just leaving him on the ground. Riley was found with a quantity of cannabis, and he was later admitted to having taken this from a cannabis farm before being followed and attacked by the perpetrator of the incident. What had happened was he'd gone to rob the cannabis farm so that he was able to then go and sell the things. But the person whose farm it was not amused by this and chased him and attacked him. He suffered a fractured eye socket and a perforated pancreas. Initially, he refused to engage with the treatment that he was needed for his injuries while he was at the hospital. However, since then, he has made a good recovery. I thought it's really important to let you know that right away because his injuries were so severe and what happened to him was so severe. I thought you'd want to know right away that he's actually physically okay at the moment. The longer term impact won't be known until further assessments can be taken, but he's refusing to have those assessments because he just doesn't trust people. So who is Riley? And this might be the kind of bald information that you get before he came to live in your house. He's the eldest child. He's got 2 younger half siblings, and their father is his stepfather. His biological father is in prison, and Riley has no contact with him at all. And at the time of the incident, Riley was living in supported accommodation. So I don't know how many of you have got supported accommodation, but he could have been living in one of your homes. That accommodation had been sourced by the local authority following Riley being arrested and being on bail conditions, saying that he couldn't enter his parental address due to being involved in stealing a neighbour's car. Riley was open to children's social care on a child in need basis at the time of the incident, and he'd had a number of missing from home episodes, and he'd been recently referred to the MACE, the multi-agency child exploitation hub. So everybody knew how much at risk he was. But he was living in supported accommodation, he was on bail, so professionals were aware of him, but lots of different professionals had lots of different areas of information about him. And the Serious Case Review came up with some really good findings. And they covered the review itself covered a significant period of time in order to understand Riley's lived experience. So that means that there's been probably a change in practice since that time, because if you look at least over 17 years, and this came out a couple of years ago, there's always different lessons coming through, aren't there? Different messages from government about the way that we're supposed to work, from the Office of the Children's Commissioner, from things that Josh McAllister have been saying. There are changes quite often. For example, since he's been put in supported accommodation premises are now being registered by OFSTED. It's therefore proposed that the partnership ensures that practice is improved. So we're hoping that since all of this happened to Riley, everybody's practice has improved and that this shouldn't happen to another child. But we're looking at the ways where we can improve that and make sure that they're clear.
Right. How big on the screen?
Okay. So one of the ways that this can happen, that the review suggested, was that should always explore the use of a communication passport, which can be reviewed at key stages in the child's life. So all agencies understand the strategies needed to engage with a child who has additional needs. So I don't know how many of you have worked with children who have communication difficulties. How do you know which method is the right one for them? And this is where a communication passport can be really, really important, so that all agencies know, for example, if a child responds well to Makaton, or if a child can understand what you're saying to them, providing you're right in front of them, or a child feels better in communicating with you by text. I've certainly worked with children in their teens who, when they get to the stage where they don't actually want to talk, but they want to share what's happening, text communication can be really, really important. And that's their method of communication. They'll tell you a lot by that. And also consider the approach to adolescents receiving hospital treatment. 16, 17, children think they know it all. They think that they can make decisions about themselves. And often they won't stay for hospital appointments and they'll just leave. How can that be addressed when we're working with hospitals? And particularly given, if any of you saw the news this morning, all of the reports about waiting times in A&E, for example. If you've got an injured adolescent who really doesn't want to be there, how can you make them stay and get the treatment that they need? So that the findings were saying then that we need to be looking at that, and that's still a situation today. So practical steps. So I'm giving you practical steps right at the beginning. And obviously you will get these slides, you can look through them, but these are all practical steps that you could be working on in partnership with the other agencies involved in young people's lives. So the use of combined chronologies in multi-agency meetings. So if you're having a meeting about what has happened in a child's life, does everybody have their own chronology? So if they all got separate information about this child, it might be good to combine them so we get the full picture. A lot of people still coming in, which is good. Children with disabilities workers fully understand safeguarding concerns in all cases and act as appropriate to safeguard children. Very often, a child with disabilities may have a different support system to maybe a child in need or a child in need of care and protection. So they may have different social workers. And those workers are specialists in that disability field. Sometimes they may not always be aware of some of the safeguarding concerns around that child as well. So it's about making sure that all of those workers fully understand the need for safeguarding and protection, as well as what is happening with a child with disabilities. In your positions, you won't necessarily know that, they don't have that, but do all of you and do all of your staff understand that just because a child has a disability doesn't mean that they're not at risk of getting involved in safeguarding issues as well. And that all of our assessments take into account all vulnerabilities at the earliest opportunity. So that's ensuring that the child receives the right support at the right time. It's not always waiting until they're 15 or waiting until they're 17 or they're going to be 18 tomorrow. They can maybe get that support then. It's about doing it now. And the agencies work together to understand the needs of a child and the strategies needed to work with them if they have learning needs, and ensure that this is clearly recorded in all agency records. Very often, children coming into our homes have a form of learning disability. Do we know that? Do we understand that? Have we linked with people that can support them with this? And the workforce, so that's us. That's all of us that work in children's homes, in supported accommodation provisions. Do we understand that our children and young people with challenging behaviour are usually trying to communicate with us? So we need to find a way to understand their lived experience to ensure we can meet that need. If you look at it, that very often a behaviour is a result of an unmet need. Can we recognise what that need is? Can we address what that is with the child? I know I'm probably teaching you all to suck eggs, and yes, you can do this, but often a child with maybe a learning disability or communication difficulties, because they just don't know how to explain how they're feeling, can respond in a fight or flight way. Do we understand that? Is that part of our risk assessments, behaviour support plans? Are we looking at that with the child to meet their individual unmet need? And that all of our workforce, all of our teams know that learning needs can be a risk for young people to be exploited, and that the team around a child or young person with learning needs consider this within their planning. So We've seen this when we're looking at CCE work, CSE work, all that kind of thing, don't we? We're aware of this. And particularly children with a learning disability, no matter how mild, can be more vulnerable to this. So it's really, really important that all of our staff understand this as well, and they understand the steps that they will be taking in order to do this. And as I said, this was picked up in this review. And was not brought policies are robust and implemented effectively. Do any of you know what I mean by was not brought?
I was going to ask that question.
All right. So very often, appointments are made for young people and children to see health professionals, and they don't turn up at the appointment, either because the parent doesn't take them, or say they're 14, 15 living with you and they say they won't go. If you don't then communicate that with the person who the appointment was with, usually a health professional, they just write was not brought and they don't follow it up. And it's really important that medical professionals, particularly maybe around CAMS, mental health provision, that kind of support, don't just record was not brought, but look at why. And I know they're really busy. I appreciate that. And I know there are waiting lists, but there has to be a good reason why a child didn't turn up for that appointment. And they have a responsibility as well to find out why the child didn't come. Was not brought isn't enough. And this is what this serious case review said very, very clearly. It's the responsibility of all professionals, not just us, to make sure that appointment takes place. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's clear.
Thank you. Okay. So why am I sharing all of this with you? You can look at it yourselves and so on, but I just thought it'd be really useful if, as I've said, Riley never actually became a looked after child, but he could have been. And perhaps he would have had better life chances if he had been. There were lots of professionals involved in his life, or he was referred to throughout his life, who didn't speak to each other. So they all had little bits of information about him that they worked on in their silos. And I know that we're saying now that silos don't exist in the way that they did perhaps when I was in practice, but I think they do. You know, if we're honest about it, if we look at, it's great when we can get a really good LAT review together, but often in supported accommodation, it's harder to do that, especially when a child is getting to the age where they're going to be moving on into adult provision, is making sure that adult social workers understand that child's needs as well. And Riley so easily could have been referred to one of your children's homes when he was younger, when we look at some of the things that happened to him as part of the chronology search. Or he could be coming to your supported accommodation provision tomorrow, because he's still young, still 17. So after all of this is going on, he could be being referred to you. And there are other Rileys out there. Plus, this is one of the best SERs I've ever read, because there's really good evaluation and clear steps for all professionals to follow. You know, those beginning bits that we looked at, they're bits that I think are really, really powerful, and they're lessons that we can all learn from. But also, it shows the power of the shared chronology, because if all professionals put their pieces of the jigsaw together, we get to see the real child. Because too often, particularly when young people are coming into the care world, as it were, older, you can have a 15-year-old walking through your door with real attitude because they don't want to be there and they're scared and they don't know what's going to be happening in the home. They may have heard stories. They may have heard that it's going to be great. You get to go go-karting and bowling to escape rooms. It's free cinema and great food, but also you have to be in at a certain time. And people will be looking at you and talking about you and writing things down about you. And with supported accommodation, you may be sharing that provision with other people you don't actually want to share with, that you may have had problems with before you moved in. So there's all of those questions there. And it's really important that we're aware of all of those, that everybody can see the whole thing, the whole picture. So we're going to go through Riley and things that happened to him, that I pulled out, that things that happened to him that were little from this serious case review. Here, my name is Riley, I'm 3. I drank some water and it was yucky. It burned my mouth and a nurse looked at my mouth. I burned my leg too on Mummy's tongs. The water that he drank was actually bleach, and it had been left in his bedroom. So he was thirsty and he drank it. I heard the nurses tell my mummy that I was too little and I should be a bigger boy. My name is Riley. I'm 6. The fire brigade came to my house last night, but it wasn't fun to see the fire engine. I was scared. My mummy's boyfriend made a fire in the garden and burned mummy's things. He hurts her sometimes. The police took him away, but he came back to stay with us again. He gets angry with mummy and I get scared. I don't want him to hurt my mummy. So we've got a little boy who's already seeing really scary things happen in his life. People like the police come and the fire brigade come, but this man, this nasty man who hurts them all, still comes back again. So who's protecting him? Who can he start to trust? My name is Riley. I'm 8 years old. I can't do some of the things my friends can do, so I have to go to 2 different schools. They gave me a test to see what was wrong with me. My mum has asked for help with my behaviour because I hit and bite and swear sometimes. Things get too much for me, and sometimes I run away from her. At school, I hide under the table when I feel scared. I don't know how to be friends and play the way that other children do. I can be clumsy. I feel angry and sad and I lash out. I said I wanted to kill myself. So he's 8 now, but he's still scared. And that nasty man is still there. But the blame is beginning to go on Riley, isn't it? Because he hits and bites and swears because of his unmet needs. Remember what we said earlier about how people will react with an unmet need? So this is where he is now. And at 8, he's already saying, I want to kill myself. My name is Riley. I'm 10 years old. I find it hard to get to sleep on a night, so I'm awake a lot, and I don't really feel hungry or want to eat that much. At school, I have a teacher that works just with me because I don't understand things the way that the other children do, and I can't do the work by myself. I find it hard to concentrate. My mum has been talking to different people about me because she needs help with me. I sometimes stay with my gran when I'm too much for my mum. I get really frustrated and angry and hurt others. I've had some more tests to find out what was wrong with me. I wish I was dead. So things are still going badly for Riley. Nobody's actually found out what's happening with him. Nobody actually understands him. So he's started to be moved around. He's going to Gran's, coming back to Mum's, and he still wants to be dead. And he's only 10. My name is Riley. I'm 11 years old now. It can be loud at home with shouting and arguing. The police come to my house sometimes. Last time they came was because my stepdad was drunk and he stamped on my mum's head. I don't feel happy. I feel worried in my belly. I'm finding school even harder. It's hard to follow the rules. I've got a friend though, and we do some fun things together. But we got into trouble for throwing stones at the teachers' cars. School said I couldn't come back for a few days because of my behaviour. I've had some more tests to see what is wrong with me. Someone was going to be helping me, but my mum forgot to take me to see them. So he's 11. Things are still really horrible and violent at home. The police are still coming. Everybody's still drinking too much. And he's still in there. They still don't know what's wrong with him. Somebody was going to help him, but was not brought. Remember the thing about was not brought? Why wasn't that followed up? My name is Riley. I'm 13 years old. I don't always go to school. Sometimes I go for a walk with my friends instead. When I'm there, I find it hard. I get frustrated and throw things or kick and shout. I've damaged things and got into trouble. When I went to the shops with my friends, police found me. I had a knife in my pocket, so I had to work with some people about knives. On a school trip, me and my friends set fire to a bush, and the police and fire brigade had to talk to us. Someone else was going to be helping me about how I'm feeling and my behaviour and why school is hard for me, but my mum forgot to take me to see them again. So now he's progressing. He's got a knife. He's setting fire to things. The police and the fire brigade are back. Remember when he was 6? The police and fire brigade were there, but there was still all that nastiness going on around him. So he must be thinking, what more do I have to do? Who's going to listen? What's going on? Because he didn't understand. So now he's 15. I'm 15 years old. And this is when he might have been coming into you, perhaps. Me and my friends have talked about running away. I get into a lot of trouble at school. I just get really angry and I can't control it. And I do things that I shouldn't do. I punched someone, was excluded for a few days. I've hit teachers too. Someone was going to help to manage my anger, but my mum didn't take me to see them. I've been staying out late with my friends. The police sometimes find us because my friends' parents have reported them missing. I like to smoke weed with my friends. I've tried some other drugs too. Makes me feel good. People have asked me if I want counselling. Well, what's the point in talking to someone when I don't even know what's going on myself? I've had tests before and no one has diagnosed me with anything and nothing has helped so far. So there's no point. So he's already giving up, isn't he? He's 15, he's running away, being excluded at school, assaulting people. Remember when he was 13, he was carrying a knife. Is he still carrying a knife? What's going on with him? And a big one there for him is the police find us because my friend's parents have reported them missing. His mum isn't, or his stepdad. So again, there's a lot of missed opportunities here, aren't they? Okay, now he's 16. I'm 16 years old and I go to college. That's positive, isn't it? Moved on to college, hopefully. But I spent a lot of time out and about with my friends, and my social worker is constantly asking to do a return home interview with me because I stay out all night. I don't see the big deal. I'm only out with my friends. So he's vulnerable. Most of the time we don't know where he is and what he's doing. I had a girlfriend, but we split up because I found out she was only 13. I smoke cannabis. People are worried about me taking drugs, but I don't see what the big deal is. It helps me sleep. They'd wanted me to work with someone about drug use, but I don't think that's an issue. I've been getting into a lot of arguments at home. Police came again. I phoned them because my stepdad was going for my mum and he headbutted me when I got in the way. They'd been drinking. A social worker came to talk to me, but I couldn't be bothered to speak to them. I've been staying with Gran a lot. I'd rather kill myself than go home. One day I'm good, and the next day I am not. I think I've got bipolar. I've got another girlfriend. I was arrested, though, because we got into an argument over having no money for cannabis, and I slapped her. I kept getting calls on my mobile from numbers I didn't know, so I ignored them. I think it might have been people trying to talk to me about things I've done. I know I need help, But lots of people keep trying to talk to me, and I don't understand why I have to talk to them. And I don't understand who they are. So he's at that stage now where everybody's trying to step in and do something. Lots of people are ringing him. We can already see the pattern of what he's learnt from what stepdad was doing, because he's hit his girlfriend, but that's probably or could be tied in again with fight or flight. And all these individual people that have been trying to talk to him know about the other information that the others hold. So now, my name is Riley. I'm 17 years old. A social worker has been coming to see us again because my sister had told her teacher about my stepdad dragging my mum around and throwing her on the floor. So all that domestic violence that's been going on since Riley was 6 is still going on. And there are 2 younger children in the house as well. So there's still all of those things happening. He threatened to kill me, and I was so angry, I tried to smash the windscreen of his car. He gave me a black eye. I keep telling people that my stepdad hurts my mum, but nothing changes. It's been going on since he was 6. I've stopped going to college. I've been arrested a few times for things like setting fire to a car, hitting someone with a hammer, breaking into cars, threatening someone, smashing windows at home, burglary. The police took my phone. For him, that would be huge. I know I need some help, but I don't want referrals to places. I'm worried about talking to different people, and I find it hard to control how I'm feeling when people talk to me about me. I've cut myself on my arm a few times, but I wouldn't have the balls to really kill myself. I met a nurse who was really nice, and she really listened to me. I told her how I felt, and it felt good to have someone listen to me. I wonder if she can help me. Me and my friends went to a cannabis farm and took some, but I was chased by the people who owned it. Someone chased after me and ran me over and beat me up. I was taken to hospital, but I didn't want them to treat me. So he does want help. This nurse he found was nice, was good to him, and he wondered if she could help him. But there's still all these other people around. So he's not sure where he's at and what is happening. So do you feel now, before I move on, let's move this up a bit and have a look at people. Do you feel you have a picture of Riley now? Anyone?
Yeah, we do. We feel like we've got a better understanding of where he's coming from.
Yeah. And very often when a child is coming into your home, would you have all of that information?
No, it can be quite spotty. It's sometimes, I mean, in an ideal world, we'd have everything and everything would go smoothly, but things can get missed if it's like inaccurate record keeping and things like that.
Yeah. And often you can end up with lots of different pieces of information from different places, can't you? And it's about pulling that together.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving on then, what can we do with this? So this is what I mean. What can you do now? So do you know your young person's early childhood experiences? Have you thought about them as a 3-year-old or a 6-year-old or a 10-year-old? Before we move on to the next thing, the next question in there, very often when I'm working in homes where they've got particularly a young person that's really angry coming in, all they can see, and I can understand why, because you're looking at how that child might impact on other children or young people already in your home. Do your staff have the right skills and understanding to work with them? Is everybody appropriately trained if things happen? But are you able ever to look at that, say, angry 16-year-old and imagine the frightened 3-year-old or the frightened 6-year-old in them. Have any of you done that?
I think to a
Yes,
certain
yes.
degree, yes, and we've got empathy, and we try and, when we're speaking with them and communicating with them, especially when they're heightened, we do try and take that on board and try and empathise and remember that, especially when they are frightened, they go right back there to that time. So the way you speak and communicate to them and respond is very important, because they can just blow up like a bottle of pop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. Was that you, Jessica, that spoke?
Suzanne.
Suzanne. Okay. Jessica.
Hi. So unfortunately, yes, we have dealt with a lot of these situations, and there's been no real information about anything substantial going on in their life, especially when we take on referrals for young people and they're painted as a completely different person to what they are. And it seems like sometimes that those referrals are just coming through to get them housed in a quick enough manner so that, we can just move on to the next one, sort of thing, instead of actually looking at what they really need and making sure that the care that they need is provided. And a lot of the times these young people are jumping between so many different accommodations because their needs can't be met for what they really need, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse for them. But unfortunately, from what we've already seen and read about Riley, early intervention was completely missed here. He was left for a long time, and the fact that he drank bleach and had a burnt mouth at the age of 3 should have already been raised as a safeguarding. So it's really concerning that he's gone all of these years without the appropriate support, because now they've kind of set him up for life to fail.
Yeah. Unfortunately, children are coming in later and later now. And we don't get all of the information unless we look at this. This is why we're doing this, because we'll look at ways of you sort of putting a chronology together to get a real picture of your child sooner.
Yeah, I just think sometimes a chronology is not enough. Do you know what I mean? We can get a good idea of the young person we're working with for sure, but unfortunately sometimes when they get to our care, regardless of what we do or don't know about them, sometimes it's just a little too late.
Yeah, I personally feel it's too late, but Sooner, you had your hand up.
I'm Granny Linda. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you put your
So,
picture on when you speak so that
yeah, we're just trying to keep fiddling with things to put stuff.
It's on.
It says it's here, there, yeah, there, it's there.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, also when the information is given at the referrals of what their behaviours are, the people paint a picture that they won't be able to manage that behaviour. So there's that side of it as well. So when you get the information that it's, oh no, we won't be able to, so there's the side of knowing it, and then there's a side of perception of people having oh, we can't manage this because look, they've done this, or oh god, we're grabbing them and what we're gonna do. It's all that. Sometimes when you do know, especially the behaviour side of it and what they've done, sometimes it's better not to know that, because then you can work from the beginning, knowing that they've, like obviously the abuse and stuff like that, you need to know. But what I'm saying is, if they've, assaulted somebody or all them things, sometimes it's better not knowing, so you can start from scratch.
Yeah, so they come with a clean slate.
Because you put a picture in your head. If you have it all wrote down, it says they've done this, they've done this, then you're going to say, oh, look what we're getting. People have a perception, and so there's also that way of looking at it. If you were to know everything.
I think furthermore, though, to what you were just sharing there is very, very true. But we also, part of this chronology is that if we know what the behaviours are and what triggered them, we would be better equipped to provide the support that they need, you know, to prepare by risk assessments and support plans that, okay, speaking about this young person's parents triggered them to do this. So we learn, okay, we're not going to do that sort of thing, but we hardly ever get anything.
But what I mean is because it's before we get it, that young person, they go to it's like a referral, so it comes through the management look at it.
Yeah.
And then before we even get to know. So, and what I'm trying to say, you can't get to that point, because if we know, because they don't get the information, but if we know, they get the information, because if they don't, it's like you don't get it, then it's like then you're shocked when you do get it, and then when you do get it, oh well, no, we can't manage this one, we can't manage this one. Do you see what I mean? So it's like that middle, it's getting that, it's having the information, like we can manage this, and look at the put risks in straight away to manage that situation, because member of staff get all what they've done, you know, and
No, I
they
fully
tend to
appreciate
pitch
where
that.
you're coming from there.
But it's also where the
Both-
member
it's
staff
like, I'm
needs
trying to get
training.
both sides. Yeah,
Yeah,
both sides
thank
of
you.
the argument, that you know,
Brilliant.
not the
Thank you
argument,
for
the
that.
discussion.
To do. Yeah. Can I number SP? You've been waiting with your hand up for a while.
It's just to check if the food everything is within the dates, and then if this one, and then check out this one, we'll put them in it.
Sorry.
I think SP said that their mic might not be working.
Okay, can you do a message in the chat?
They have done, Marie. Just waiting
Okay,
for you.
they said Liam. Okay. Chat. Okay. Ah, you said your mic does work. Thank you, Suni. You've said sometimes we receive the referral when the police involves without any prior information. As the police intervenes during the crisis time, this crisis usually does not show the real picture of the referral. True, isn't it? Because a crisis can be very different to actually have a child. Do you remember what I said partway through about that unmet need that very often a child's behaviour is displaying? And it's because of that unmet need that they may be behaving in the way they are. And if you and your team are meeting that need, they don't need to behave in that way. But can I come to, is this Pete? Yeah. Who's got your hand up?
Yes. Yeah, for me, you know, we need, you know, the information, you know, gathered as managers. You know, we get the referrals, and sometimes we know these referrals can be out of date. I have a load of referrals when I've been working in other homes where, you know, they're 6 months out of date. But also as a management team, you know, you've got to be thinking to yourself, can we facilitate Riley? You know, and we've got to also realise we've got other young people, so that all that matching thoughts. So what are you doing? You know, you're taking someone like Riley in, you know, are people doing their matching thoughts properly? You know, because Riley's not going to match with everyone. He's had a traumatic childhood. And for me, as managers, and there'd be a load of managers probably on here, that, you know, you have to match these children together to make sure that you can best support him.
Yeah. And it's looking, isn't it, as when you're matching, it's also looking, and it's tied in with what you said earlier, it's about the skills of your staff team. Do they understand trauma-informed practice? Do they understand that a child's behaviour, as I keep saying, is as a result of an unmet need? Do they understand about substance misuse as a way of coping with what's happening in a child's life? Do they understand about the impact that domestic violence through a long period of time has on a child? So there's lots and lots of questions there, aren't there? And if we have a clearer picture of what has happened with a child before they come to you, and your staff are appropriately trained, there's more chance of that child succeeding living with you and of you making that. That's why we come into the job, isn't it, to make that difference, and of you making that difference rather than there being another failure in the child's life, something else that has broken down. This is brilliant so far, everybody. Thank you. Let's move on to the next sort of bits. So as I said, how might those experiences have shaped how they see themselves now? Well, we saw with Riley, and we're using Riley as our example, but with so many of our children, if they faced domestic violence, then how have they learned to react? Do they think that violence is the way that you communicate? You tell somebody you love them by punching them. Or that it's always the person who's the violent one, they're the one who's in control. They're the one who has all the power. So do they feel that they need to be violent in order to have power? Or do they feel, what's the point? It doesn't matter what I do, things are going to go wrong for me. And we could see with Riley, because there were all these missed opportunities, and it was said right at the start, he needed kind of picking up when he was 3, didn't he? And that didn't happen. But a lot of our children, it hasn't happened with before they come to us. So those experiences, how do they see themselves now? And that's what we're looking at with all of our children. How do they see themselves? But also their perceptions of professionals. In Riley's life, he had so many different professionals coming in at different times. There was, right back when he was little, there was the fire brigade. And he's been involved with fire more than once throughout his life since then. Is that because he said he didn't find it exciting when they came? Remember, when he was 6, wasn't exciting when they came. But there were big, solid people who made a difference into his life at that little time. And the police came, but the police have done nothing to protect his mum as far as he can see, because his mum's still getting clobbered by stepdad. He goes away, but then he comes back again, and then he does it again. And he stamps on his mum's head, and he drags her around by the hair. And the police come. So are they actually, so does he look at the police as somebody that can make a difference in his life, that can protect him or can stop him? How does he see them? He's had lots and lots of contact with different professionals. But as I come on to in the next question, do they understand what all the different roles are of the adults in their lives? When you look at your children and the young people you're working with, if you took a systemic approach and how many of you have worked with systemic theory? Okay, no hands going up. All right. If you look at a systems theory with a child, you put them in the middle, and then you put circles around them of the people that are involved in their lives. So over here, you could have family members. So I'm going to keep using Riley. So we've got mum, we've got younger siblings, we've got stepdad. Dad would be over here somewhere because he's in prison and there's no contact. Gran would have to be in there because she's quite important in his life. And then there's all of these professionals. Now, he's had a whole load of professionals, different social workers, the nurse he liked, substance misuse workers, different people at school, medical professionals, all of these different people. Did he know all of their roles, or did he think they were all kind of one person all melded into one? What was it for him? You know, what was there for him? So when we're looking at our children, do they know who all of these other people are? Have you looked at that with them? Is that something that you could do to look at with them? Here's what might seem like a silly question. If you're really honest with yourselves, how many of you fully understand all of the roles of all of the people involved in the young people's lives you're working with and how they might fit together? Are any of you confused by the myriad of people they sometimes have in their lists? No. Karen. Where have you gone? Karen?
Hi, I'm here.
Okay, what were you going to say?
I didn't realise, did I put my hand up? I don't think I did.
Yeah.
know that most of the young people know, or most of us know why, because obviously we're multi-agency working. So the ones that have obviously direct contact with the young person, we would need to know, like if it's probation services or if it's therapist, social worker team or the police. So most of the professionals that are around the young, that's working with the young people, we would know who they are.
Good. Do they always know? And do they understand if there's, like, for them, what might feel like a blurring of boundaries between the different roles?
I think the young people do know who they are, but when they're all coming together all at once, and sometimes some of the work that's been done with the young people could be repetitive, and that's why they kind of freeze up and don't always want to engage, because they're like, oh, I went through this with my support worker, or I spoke to my social worker about this already. I don't want to kind of go through it again, or it might be something sensitive that they've discussed with their therapist. And then we're trying to gauge and get information to put in their key works, and they wouldn't necessarily want to kind of go over that traumatic conversation because they've had it with another professional already.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because we're tasked, aren't we, by the regulations to ensure that we're doing, key work that's beneficial with our young people and demonstrate and evidence that the work that we're doing means something. And if they have been talking to a therapist or a psychiatrist or their YOS worker or whatever, they might not want to repeat all of that with us. And it's how we record that as well, isn't it? Is making sure that, we can use the system to record clearly they had that appointment and that has been shared. And that's where mentor can be good in its way, because what you can do is make sure that you record that those appointments have taken place, but also then record that you are sensitive to the fact they've already spoken to somebody else and might not want to share this with you, but letting them know that if they want to, they can. So tips and ideas moving forward. Read referral documents very carefully. Do they have a chronology? More than one? And very often there is more than one, and it's looking at what do they actually tell you, because sometimes in some of the chronologies I've read over the years, they tell you very, very little. Others will often tell you more about, if it's one that comes, for example, from the local authority, will tell you a lot more about what's happening with the rest of the family as well. And where is your child in there? Where were they? Do they know what's going on? And this is often the case, again, back with domestic violence situations where there's quite a severe incident going on. Where's the child? How does it feel for them? So, because those sorts of situations really impact on children, and we must never lose sight of that and how we're going to use that to go forward. So then talk to your young person. Choose a time that might have been memorable for them. For example, birthday, Christmas, summer holidays. What can they remember about that time each year? And start to put together a chronology of what it was like actually for the child. And this is why I'm sort of bringing you all back up again. Because very, very often chronologies, as I said, will bring in other people as well. And they will bring in factual things. But what did it feel like for that child? And who was involved in their lives? And did they understand? And it's coming back to what I was saying about unmet need. What was missing for them then? If we look back at Riley when he was 6 and he was saying, I wish I was dead, and this violence was going on, we've got a clearer picture, haven't we, of what was there. But what I'm not clear about, even having gone through it all very clearly, I don't know how much contact he had with dad, birth dad, before stepdad came in. I know dad is in prison and he doesn't like dad now, but was there anything good about dad in the beginning? Because he was with mum and dad to begin with. So what memories does he have of dad? And does he have a fantasy that actually if he'd lived with dad, things might have been better? And what we mustn't lose sight of, not just with Riley, but with others of our children, is that he has a learning disability. So wasn't marked. He was in mainstream school to begin with. and he was receiving support in school. And so often, so many of our children have that, don't they? They've got that extra support in school, and we have the sort of learning support plans that are happening with them. Sometimes there's a reduced timetable in order to try and keep them involved in education in some way. But how much did he actually comprehend? How much did he actually understand about what was happening? Have any of you sat down with your young people since they've been living with you and started to put a chronology together of their lives, to start looking for where the patterns were, when things were, not just when things were bad, when were things good? What felt good that you can do again, that you can build on, that you can maybe link somebody in? I'll give you an example. When I was working in Yorkshire, I was doing this, so I was doing a chronology with a family, and actually it's a very convoluted family with lots and lots of different people in it, to the extent that one of the members in my team, I was managing a childcare team, one of the members in my team had used an old roll of wallpaper, which we'd pulled out, in order to do a family tree, because there were so many different people involved. And in doing that, and in trying to put the chronology together, we discovered that there was an uncle that this lad had been really, really close to when he was younger, and the uncle had somehow completely disappeared from his life. And he didn't know why, but that had been a real time of warmth for him, a real time when he felt he belonged, that people cared about him, that he had a future. So we unpicked this, and we discovered that sadly Uncle had died, but they didn't know how to tell him because he loved him so much. So in his head, though, Uncle had abandoned him. Uncle had left him and gone off because of something he'd done that was wrong. When it was explained to him that Uncle had died, it was almost like a huge relief for him, because he realised it wasn't his fault. Uncle had died through no fault of his own. He'd got ill and had died, but he hadn't abandoned him. He hadn't just ignored him. So when there'd been problems with his life in the future, when he kept thinking Uncle would come in and make things better, and he never turned up all the time, and that was feeling of abandonment and loss. And actually, Uncle would have been there if he could have been. And once that was put to bed, and once it was explained, and he was actually being able to take to the grave and say his goodbyes in that way, there was like this huge weight gone off him. To be honest, literally physically, because he'd had a lot of weight issues, he was eating for comfort, that was his support. Once he realised that, he kind of didn't have to eat for England anymore. He was able to eat more healthy, he was able to make changes in his life. So look at what was the good, and that we could link that in with, as well as areas where there was those things that were happening with Riley. So examples from you. Can you tell, any of you, share with us that things that you've done? No? Okay. It is harder when you're on a screen, isn't it? If we were all in a room together, there'd be lots of, I know there would. So start to put their chronology together with them. What threads can you see? So when you're doing that chronology, going back to what I was saying about unmet needs, what were the threads? In Riley's case, the chronology was showing very, very clearly domestic violence as a thread throughout his. There was also all those not brought appointments, all those appointments.
Substance abuse. Parents.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Parental substance abuse.
Yeah.
Neglect.
Yes.
Definitely neglect.
There were two biggies. And do you think, looking back at some of your children, is that some of the things that you think you can see in their lives, just from the bit that you know about them?
Most definitely. Yeah.
One thing that stood out for me through the story is that he understood that there was, well, the perception that there was something wrong with him the entire time, and that nobody could figure out why. I'm thinking in my mind that surely is quite like an anxious environment to live with for such a prolonged period of time, is being told that there's something wrong with you, but all these people that you see can't tell you what.
Yeah. And the powerful message from that is that rather than looking at what's happening with mum and her drinking and her involvement with stepdad and dad and his drinking and his violence, the problem is with Riley rather than their behaviours.
That's what
So
I
if
was
that's,
going to say. It's
yeah.
making out that Riley is the problem, whereas actually Riley is a product of his environment.
So what are his unmet needs? Okay.
I think
One.
everything is
Yeah.
his unmet needs. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. Well, number one is safety, isn't it? And protection. He's not safe in that house. He's drinking bleach. He burnt himself with his mummy's tongs when he was only 3. The fire brigade had to come because of the fire because he was 6. And all of the violence that's going around him, he's not safe. So that's number one. So already you can see the beginning barriers that may be going up in his head. He's not being taken to appointments. So if they're missing appointments like that, what else are they missing? I'm wondering all the time, is there enough
He's
food?
underweight.
Yeah, good.
He's small for his
Yeah,
age. So he sounds like he's been neglected. They don't care when he's missing. They don't report him missing. So yeah,
good. So he's not being fed properly. So we've got that kind of neglect. We've got emotional neglect because mum's not there for him. We're still not really sure where dad is when we know he's in prison, but are there any other family members that could have been around? So we've got emotional neglect. We've got physical neglect because of the injuries and so on, and he's not eating properly. He goes to school, but already his behaviours at school are seen as him causing the problem, aren't they? They're not picking up enough about what might be happening at home that's causing this. And then he's not taken to appointments. And instead of actually unpicking that and searching that, it becomes not brought, which again becomes Riley's problem, because then he's like, what's the point?
If there's multiple unmet meetings, though, that's another safeguarding highlight that should have been raised, because there's clearly safeguardings around this young person. And if they're not attending the meetings, the professionals should have been investigating that, because they could have been covering up all sorts by not taking him. He could have been beaten, black and bruised, and then not taking him because of that, covering it up. So many things could have been picked up along this way.
Absolutely.
It's really terrible.
But what is scary is it may be that the health professionals didn't realise that he wasn't going to the psychological appointments, and maybe CAMS didn't realise wasn't going to education appointments, and YOS didn't realise. Things are better now in that we, particularly when people like yourselves are involved, because the mere fact that you have got your own, but also you've come to this session because you want to know more and you're working together with your child, means that you will look at the bigger picture. You will look at the other professionals involved. And I'm sure many of you have called professionals meetings when you've had concerns. You've talked to everybody else involved so that you're working collaboratively with these people so that your children get the support that they need and deserve. But
was there no other indication that the other 2 kids were getting neglected or anything like that? Was their behaviour good at school or what?
No, but they weren't being abused to the same extent that Riley was. Probably
but they were still witnessing domestic violence.
Absolutely. And things go on in patterns like that, don't they? And there's a lot of learned responses, from which is why when you look at the fact that Riley hit his girlfriend, is that out of his frustration because he thought, she's not listening to him, or was that a learned response from him? That's what you do, because that's what we're unconsciously teaching.
That is a learned behaviour for sure. And also, built up frustration of not knowing how and appropriate ways to manage life in general. But the way he was brought up and the life that he experienced is not a normal life to live. That's
No.
not a loving, caring family raising, in a family strong unit with love and care and affection. I just can't even bear to think about it.
Yeah. But that's why so many of our children come to live with us.
Yeah,
know,
and this is what I was meaning a little bit earlier when I said about sometimes it's just too late, because I don't mean like it's too late to give up, because we never give up. We never stop trying. But sometimes it's a little bit too late for them in the respect of they have lived from birth all the way to like the start of their adulthood in this environment. They just don't know any other way, and sometimes it's very hard to get them out of that. And they've just been set up in that life, unfortunately. Sometimes we do it, we achieve it, we get them on the right path, and we show them how they should have had life and how they should have experienced love and care and affection. But sometimes it's not possible.
Do you know, I understand why you're saying that,
Yeah.
but I so firmly believe, and I've literally been in this kind of work for 50 years. I started in a children's home in 1975. And in those days we lived in, there were two of us. We were house mother, assistant house mother, you called auntie, shared the bathroom with the kids, that kind of thing. I've been doing this a long time. And I think sometimes that what we do, we gardeners, we plant seeds, we water them, we put a lot of manure on them sometimes, we put a lot of love and nurturing into them. We may never actually see them flower, but we might see tiny little blooms, a little bud. So if a child, for example, comes back after they've been missing and says to you, "Oh, I'm glad I'm home," or "Thank you for listening to me," or "That was a good idea. Yeah, I can do that." One tiny little bud, that's sometimes all you need, because as they get older and they move on, they might look back and think, "That's what she meant." Or,
yeah, I mean more so like when they're with us, and then obviously they move on at 18, because unfortunately once they turn 18, it's most of the support that they receive does cease to exist, and they get a personal advisor, and they're essentially thrown out into the world to fend for themselves. But I have had people that have left and then they've ended up in prison and they've ended up doing some really bad stuff. But then I have heard of young people come sort of back a couple of years down the line, and like they've turned up at the house that I'm working at because they've seen my car, and they're like, "Jess, I wish I'd listened to you. I wish I'd listened. I wish I was still living here." And I'm like, look, we live and we learn. But sometimes what I'm saying is they just don't get to that point. But whether it takes a little bit of time or more time, whatever we can do, it doesn't matter as long as we try.
Exactly. And the government are beginning to recognise that on the 9th of January, they issued information about a new white paper that is coming out, following on from Josh McAllister's latest research, that says that, and this is supposed to be starting this year, so it's exciting, that young people who are coming out of the care system will get free healthcare, and that's free dentistry, free opticians. They should get closer, faster links to GPs up until the age of 25. And what is supposed to be happening is GPs will have the overview, and they will have on their records that the child was looked after. And from there, they can, they're supposed to link in with these other professionals, so that if a child, you know what it's like with teeth, it's really, really difficult to get an NHS appointment. And our kids very often won't go because they can't afford it. Under this new ruling that's coming in, under the new white paper, up until the age of 25, it'll be free for them to go. So we need to sort of look into that and make sure that your kids are aware of it as they're moving on from you, and that your GPs are. But tied in with that, it's really, really important that they understand how to register with a GP and how to register with a dentist and an optician's, because we do it for them, don't we? They come into us and we get them linked with our local one. Do we sit down with them when they're getting ready to move on to independence and make sure they understand
We
how
do
to
everything with them here at Creative Support Solutions. We literally, we guide them through everything. We don't do stuff for them because we're teaching them for their independence when they turn 18. So,
Brilliant.
but in the other respect on what you were just sharing, that's really, really lovely to hear. But I actually think they need to expand a bit more on that. They need better mental health services as well for these young people.
Yeah, that's part of the reason why the GP is supposed to have the overarching move. It's linked with staying put, you know, trying to keep people in the area. If you can, have a look at it. What I'll do is, it's quite a long article. I have pre-seed it I write a newsletter. And what I'll do is I will see if we can attach my précis of the news, excuse me, of the article with the link at the bottom to the full document to these slides. Would that help?
Yeah, that'd be nice to read.
Yeah? Okay,
Yeah.
do that.
Thank you.
Right. Now we are nearly done. So actually you've done really well. So you're putting your chronology together. What threads can you see? So think about, what are you going to do as a result of this work? And what I'm going to do is we are going to have literally a 5-minute break for you to think about that. And then I'm going to ask you some direct questions. Does that feel all right with everybody? Somebody speak. Yes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, brilliant. Literally 5 minutes. What time is it now? It is, I can't see the time. Oh, I've got a watch on.
Sorry, could you just repeat what you're asking us to do? I think I've completely not processed that in my brain.
Okay, you've got 5 minutes until the 1:15 to think about what you're going to do as a result of this work. And then I'm going to ask you some direct questions for you to share with each other for us to finish up on.
Okay.
Yeah? So we'll come back at, 1:15. So first question is, what's one thing from today that's made you rethink how you look at a young person's history?
I can't say that it's a rethink from today's session, more so more of a highlight on what we already work by looking at this, you know, serious case review, to push harder for the information of a young person's history, push harder for the information that will, you know, help us in providing them better person-centered care and support for what they need in their from their history. There's so many things that happen with Riley that, you know, if we knew about it properly, there's so many different ways in which you could work with him to show him that, you know, this isn't the life you should have lived, Riley, but this is the life you can live. That sort of thing. I think I will definitely push more than I do now on the social team and the other professionals that I work with to come together to create this. But I think I also will work with the young person as well and hear more about what they have to say, what they remember, what they recall, what happened for them, and then link up both sort of like the professionals' report and their report and see, you know, how different their memory of it and how different the recordings of it is as well. Because
Exactly.
sometimes
it's
point, not recorded properly.
Yes. This is why it's so important for us, isn't it, to make sure we include our children's words in what they're saying and not other people's interpretations of them. Anybody else? No? Oh, no, somebody's...
Hi, sorry, my camera isn't working. Sorry.
Who are you? Just give me your name.
My name is Lauren. My name is
Hi,
Lauren.
Lauren.
Yeah. Hi. I think everybody's made valid points, and I just want to add to it. I think moving forward is the importance of the ongoing life story work as
Yes.
well. I would say, yeah, in terms of just maintaining that sort of narrative and making sure that that support continues to be in place, and we ascertain the young person's sort of views within that, and that's fully incorporated moving forward. I think that's really important. Ongoing work, really.
Brilliant. Thank you, Lauren. Anyone else? Okay, then. The next question. Is there one small change you're going to take back in your practice after today? So it's not just about what you're doing, but in your actual practice. And this isn't just for care workers, mentors, whatever you're called, but managers as well. Is this something you're going to be doing, perhaps with your staff, to help them change their practice? Is there one thing?
For me, I think that if one of the referrals that I look at says that they have domestic violence, I think that I'm going to highlight that and ask our staff to work on that with them, so they realise that, you know, that's not the norm, and that's how you process things. You know, how do they feel about, you know, when they get annoyed, you know, do they think it's right to slap or whatever, that sort of thing? See where they're coming from, how they're thinking about it.
Yeah, really good idea. Goes back to what I was saying about identifying what the unmet need is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And in that situation, the unmet need is, how do you cope with your frustrations? Do you lash out? Do you smack? Do you punch somebody? Do you take a drink? Do you run away? It's how do they actually cope with that? Anyone else? Jessica.
So I'm sorry I keep talking. You must get sick of the
That's
sound of my
okay.
voice
No,
now.
it's good to have someone who does.
It's only because thinking all through this sort of history of Riley, there's not exact links, but there is quite a few links to a young person I actually work with now. And the young person that I work with now had to basically, you know, raise themselves, raise their siblings. There was no parents present. And then they got themselves in trouble with the law. And I sit back here and I wonder to myself, why did you get in trouble with the law? And then I look back at his history and I think, because you weren't supported, you weren't guided, you weren't taught, you weren't loved, you weren't supported, that sort of thing. And you had to go about it on your own. And then to think about that, I then will work with my young person more on reflection of his whole life, and then how he feels that, you know, things can change in his future, give him, you know, realistic goals to achieve, and you know, reward him for all the brilliant things that he's doing now. And just that, you know, he is doing absolutely amazing now. Very, very proud of him. But yeah, it's all a reflection and learning curve, and I don't think it is just for the young people. I think it's for the staff themselves as well, because every young person that we encounter has a different story.
Absolutely.
And we have to adapt to all those different stories.
And tied in with that, Jess, what you were saying, you said he got himself in trouble with the police and all these different people he'd worked with, it got involved with. Think back to that, about what I was saying about an unmet need. If a child is looking to belong somewhere and to get approval from somewhere, very often that's how they can get pulled into CCE, because the person who's getting them involved in that crime is somebody who's using them to commit an offence, and they go along with it because they want to belong and they want somebody to approve of them, even if it's I've always been told I have to watch my language. I'm not allowed to be political when I'm doing these. So even if it's some really horrid person who wants to control them for their own needs, you know, and for their benefit, our children get sucked in, don't they, because they want to belong.
Well,
So
that's
it's
a whole different training module, that is, because that's
Yeah.
all about, you know, the vulnerabilities of our young people because of their upbringings. They're easy targets, and which is
and
just
that's where
absolutely disgusting.
yeah, but the power of a chronology can show
Yeah.
us areas where there has been somebody that might have helped them and areas where they think, oh gosh, what is the point? And they're looking for that. Iolo, I hope I've said your name right. You had your hand up next.
Hi, it's Lola.
Lolo, is it?
It's all right. I think something I was also reflecting on is that within the training, it was talking a lot about the young person's context and things that happen to them and how it can kind of mould their experiences, but also I think how others view them as well. And I think also what a chronology can do, it can also keep track of different things that are happening to the young people as a result of other people's perspectives. Like recently, I had a young person who was stopped and searched by police, who was aware, the police were aware that they were a care leaver that had to come home for curfew. And from the young person's perspective, when they were asking, you know, the things that they have a right to ask of a police officer when they're being stopped and searched, an officer said to them, well, the more questions you ask, you know, the later you're going to be back to your house, so we can either do this the easy way or the hard way. And I think it's also about understanding the context of what our young people are going through as vulnerable people who aren't just targets of other general beings, but also of institutions and stuff like that as well, that also put them at a disadvantage in terms of things like police brutality, discrimination, classism, things like that. And I think that also understanding that their lived experiences have also been shaped by struggle and pain from the perspectives of others as well can also help us in terms of making them feel more empowered in terms of advocacy, in terms of empowering them to know their rights as well and be more educated and also being able to speak up for themselves, and knowing that they do have power and that they are, you know, worthy and of value. And it's not just them being difficult, it's actually that the world can treat young people who are vulnerable very difficultly as well and already judge them before they've even had a chance. Yeah.
That came right back to Magic. Thank you. Tell me again how to say your name.
Lola. So instead of hi, low.
Okay, Lolo, thank you. Right back to the two ladies who are at the bottom of my screen, what you said at the beginning about when a referral comes through and you have a look, you're like, oh my gosh, can we do this? And that's where sort of managers come in. It's really, really important, isn't it, that your team have the right training to meet the needs that are coming through. What you were saying, my sort of top lefters were just underneath me on the screen about if there's domestic violence in the workshop, I'll make sure my staff understand, is about making sure your staff are trained appropriately and they see how that links in with trauma-informed practice and all of those issues that are around for people, isn't it? Sort of separation anxiety, ways of using substances in order to support, if that's what they've seen when they're growing up as well. If they've got parents who've got substance misuse issues, is that what they've seen as a way of coping? Remember, Riley was saying, I don't have a problem with drugs, it helps me sleep. Because they don't see it as a problem. He probably thought that actually he was better than his stepdad because he didn't drink. So he didn't behave in that way because he wasn't using alcohol, he was only using cannabis. Because we all come up with different reasons, don't we? Any other points on that one? No? Okay.
Oh, can I just add, sorry, it's Lauren again. I think, like, you know, professional curiosity, I think, is something that's really essential.
Yes.
And I think, you know, I'm not trying to deter away from the subject, but I think, you know, even given staff having the best training, sometimes that's not always utilized in the right ways in practice. You can have the understand the theory, but sometimes our personal anxieties can impact on the way that we practice, you know, whether that's preconceived thoughts. And I think it's really important for us as practitioners to be very aware of our own feelings and the impact that that has on our practice. So, you know, when you're working with young people and they might be quite aggressive or, you know, they're presenting with very challenging behavior, yes, you can understand that there's a lot of trauma, and that's why they're presenting that way. But it's also in managing, and I guess as managers particularly, is trying to support your team so they have the confidence, so they have the resilience, so they're not taking things personally, so they're able to act appropriately and follow the plans that are in place, you know, like behavioural support plans. Because if there's a lot of fear, for instance, around a young person making a false allegation, that doesn't automatically impact on some people's practices, unfortunately. And I think it's sort of managing those things as well with these situations.
You're spot on, because as managers, we have a real responsibility to look at good supervision for our staff. Not just about, have you done this, this, and this, and ticking boxes. It's about, how does it feel? And for them to be able to share how they feel. And it's all right sometimes to be scared, providing you're able to talk about it in supervision or with your peers, and when you're sort of working with your colleagues, and being able to trust your shift partners. But also that professional curiosity can link into what the child is doing and asking questions and asking other professionals, why haven't you done that? Or when they're missing, where were you? But always making sure that any training your staff does is valid and that they understand it. Very, very often training takes place online, doesn't it? Everybody does these training modules online. Do we then sit down with them afterwards and ask, how was that for you? You know, what did you get from it? What have you learned from it? What are you going to be able to put into practice? I call it the so what theory. Whatever you do, whether it's a really good behaviour support plan, whether it's a risk assessment, whether it's a piece of training somebody has done. So what has been the impact on you as an individual and on your child? What's going to be different moving forward for you? And particularly like with a BSP or a risk assessment, if the staff don't read it, don't understand it, and don't know how to put it into practice, it's toilet paper, not worth anything. So it's really important that we have those things in place, but that we actually understand them. And this is where also with you as managers, and I don't know how many managers are on here, you know, when there's been like an incident or a key work session or a daily recording, and your staff has written it up and you go in to evaluate it, it's not enough just to sort of say seen or done or whatever. Actually evaluate it. Have a look at what the impact of what has happened has been and record what you think could happen. What was good for the child out of that piece of work, or what could have been done better? And maybe a comment for the staff, that was a good piece of work, you know, so that the young people know that you can see what's happening, and so that the staff understand as well. Use the evaluation sections on Mentor. That's why they're there, but use them in a way that can make sense for you of what you're doing moving forward. And then have a look maybe at your chronology. Do you need to add that in there? And it doesn't always have to be negative things you put in a chronology. It's really, really important to put in positive things as well, because our kids are doing great things. Might seem really, really tiny to us, but to them that day, that's enormous, really enormous. I can think of a young person I was working with who was like really cool. He had substance misuse issues. He was always involved in things. He was living in the back of a garage with a friend. And this was years ago. And that's when spray painting was really, really huge. And his tag was all over town. And he was coming to us and sort of, he was a mess. And he'd been involved in a lot of substance misuse, but mostly sort of party drugs, acid, ecstasy, speed. They were his things. When he first came to me, I was running a drugs agency at the time. I didn't start with looking at the drugs. I started with you changing your underpants every day and you cleaning your teeth every day, because it's about starting to get some self-respect back into him. Starting to get him to look at himself as an important person. Then we could move on to other things. We could move on to the substances. And for him, that really, really worked. And years later, I was swimming in my local pool and somebody's head appeared over the end of the pool, and he was now the lifeguard at the pool. And he was really pleased to see me, and I was really conscious that I was now this great fat blob, you know, trying to swim, and he was looking down on me. But it worked for him. So it's looking at the so what. So what's the impact of what you're doing? Yeah. So We're nearly done. This is the last question. You don't have to share, but has anyone experienced a situation where missing information or poor information sharing impacted a child's outcome? I can see a hand. Yes. Pete, that's you.
Yeah, we took a young girl about a year and a half ago, and the referral came through, and the referral read really well, and I thought, hang on, yeah, we're able to do some work with this young girl. One huge bit of information was missing, that she had twice set fire to her bedroom.
That is huge.
And within a day of being with us, she set fire to her quilt, pillow, and bed. And because I did not have this information, and even when social workers brought her, this was left out, omitted. And unfortunately for her, I had to serve immediate notice on her, because I can't have an arsonist in the home. But other than that fire starting, she read really well. We could do some work with her, but neglected to miss out that one vital bit of information.
Yeah.
So I had to serve immediate notice on her.
If they had put that information in and given you time to ensure that staff maybe had specialist training on this, that you'd upped your fire sort of fire watch, as it were, and had introductions with her so that you were starting that work, do you think you would have given her the chance to come to you?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's that lack of information, and
Exactly.
I'm sure a lot of us have been caught out by that serious lack of information, and it goes back, I think, to it's just wanting to place a child, and for me, you've got to be completely open, honest, and transparent. Yes, we could have put other measures in place and possibly done some really effective, positive work that would have had some major outcomes for her. But unfortunately, that was missed out.
Absolutely. So she ended up facing another rejection, which was not of her doing and not of your doing, because you hadn't been given that information. I can see why they didn't tell you, thinking you wouldn't take them. But if proper planning is done and proper work, you can prepare ready. We've one of the companies I'm involved with, we've recently taken in a child who, unfortunately, at the moment is 3 to 1. Was 3 to 1 when he came to us. He's already, after 10 days, down to 2 to 1. And we're working towards things with him. And this was a boy who'd been had adults before, had been in an unregistered provision before we got him. He does have special educational needs, and he does get a little bit, bless him, jazzy. But because we were able to do really good introductions, so we came to the home first, he met with everybody, he knew who all of the team were that were going to be working with him, very clear plans were put in place before he came. This is going really well. And, it's about that preparation. Jess?
So that's the difficulty again with referrals that are not reflecting a true reflection of the care and support that's required. Whereas I know full well we look at the referrals and we are open to all young people that are coming through on the referrals, but when the information's not there, we cannot properly safeguard the other young people that are there and also the staff. So it's not about rejecting the young person, it's about setting the young person up and protecting the other young people that we're also linking them with appropriately. And there's a lot of times where the social team will put forward referrals and they will not under any circumstances accept a solo provision. They want a shared because obviously costings, but not taking into account that matching of a shared provision actually puts the other young people at risk. on
Yeah.
so many occasions. We've had so many occasions where other young people have been at risk and have been subject to harm because social care want to reduce costings.
I'm Jess's manager, and I can say for a fact that is absolutely true. And me and my colleague now, we read, because most of it's positive. They start off positive, and it's when you scroll all the way right down to the bottom. I read them from the bottom now. You get the crux of what's really going on. But then, even then, you know, I say to my colleague, but there's so much information missing here. I said we need to go back to the social worker and say, and the rest, and the rest, and the rest. You know, which is what we do now, because we've been hit a few times with some very dangerous people. And we're supposed to be putting in with our other people, and it's just not right. It's, you know, you're not safeguarding your children, and you're not safeguarding your staff neither, you know. So I think social services really do need to shake their heads a few times, you know, because sometimes they don't. I mean, we've actually had to close a placement, and then we've seen their referral go out, because we don't give up on our children at all. It's only when they do something very, very serious that we actually close their thing, and then their referral's gone out two days later or whatever, and it hasn't even got the incident in there. And I'm thinking, God, they're just setting this poor kid up to fail again. It's really frustrating. But anyway, that's enough of me. Shut up.
No, I fully understand what you're saying. I really do, because I've seen it literally just before Christmas. A home I was involved in, doing really, really good work with a child on a solo placement. Not ready to introduce another child, but almost there. And the plan was for it to happen after Christmas, so it wasn't so stressful for that child. The local authority removed him, took him to another, because of costings, as you said, took him to another placement, and literally 4 days later, his profile was out again after he tried to hang himself, which he'd never done when living in our home. So I know, but let's finish this on a positive. One of you tell me about when you had a good chronology come with good information about a child that technically you thought this might be hard work, but that actually you made a difference. You had all that information, so you were able to use that information that came in. You used that to do a really good care plan. You know, I'm going to big up Mentor here. You know, you use the Mentor system to do your care plan and to do your risk assessment, do your behaviour support plan. You then did that work with your staff, and it made that difference. And that child could be a tiny, tiny little thing, but something happened with that child as a result of that work you did from the chronology, from the information, to move things forward. I bet there's going to be somebody in here on this screen, 5 of you here, 1 of you will have had a really good thing happen. Please, 1 of you have a really good thing happen. Well, I've just told you about one that we had, which on paper you would have thought, oh my gosh, don't go anywhere near him, but how well he is doing.
We've just, one of our kids has just turned 18 and moved on. And when we first got him, he was I'll say this openly, he was an absolute nightmare. But with persistence and lots of persistence and lots of intervention from quite a few people working with us, he has now got a job, and he's now living in a shared accommodation. You know, I mean, we're still waiting for it to go wrong, to be honest with you, because, you know, we were like family to him, but and we're still putting the time in with him, even though he's gone. We've been given a little bit of a transfer thing, but you know, he was a success story. So, and he was so grateful, and he wrote some lovely things about the staff and everything. So yeah, that was a success story. So woohoo to us.
Good.
And
Well,
him.
thank you. Pete.
Yeah, I've spent many years working in a secure environment, and one young lad that I was reading a referral for, and I thought, oh my goodness me, this is going to be a handful. You know, they wanted to place him because he was on trial for murder. And oh my gosh, he's going to be an handful. But we were sort of directed by the local authority, yeah, we want him here. We don't want to place him out of county. And I thought, oh my, how's this going to sit like with the other kids we got? So we took him, and the referral just was awful. But there were glimmers in there, if you know what I mean. Took him, and actually he proved us all wrong. Yeah, he was on trial and all that sort of stuff, but he actually got the therapies and all the other agencies involved while he's with us. He was with us for 14 months. Not once did this lad step out of line. He went to school every day, so much so he's now a lead dancer in the West End of London. But he learned all his dancing at the secure establishment that I worked in. He learned all it because we used to have a dance troupe come in, and he picked it up. And now he's a lead dancer in the West End of London.
That is amazing. Fab. Thank you. And I can see, is it the hand is over your initial, but Jess.
Yeah, me again. I'm really sorry to say I can't sit here and tell you that the information we've received from social care has been appropriately written and we've been able to appropriately write risk assessment support plans, care plans, whatever you want to call them from that. I can only say that from the work of the senior management and the staff on the first line have taken with a pinch of salt what we've got and built up from there. So it's, yeah, there's been so many occasions where we've had young people, just like Pete just said, that look absolutely horrific, and then they come in and they're like, why has this person been painted in this picture? Like, okay, they have done some bad things, but why have they done those bad things? So yeah, it's, I can't sit here and say that I've ever received information of a true nature, a true reflection, and that there's been a positive outcome just by the paperwork that we've received from social care. It's never happened. There's been a positive outcome because of our ability to what's it called, adapt, and change the way we support and come up with new ideas and that sort of thing, and also pushing social care for the information required, really. But yeah,
thank you. Well, tied in with that, Maureen put in the chat something that she's going to take back to her team, but that it ties in with what we've just been saying. To take back to the team would be looking at the referral more deeper, and exploring more with the local authority around risk assessments and services that could support the home and the young person. So it's about picking up, isn't it, what you hear, what is recorded, what is sent to you about the child, and actually looking at the whole thing. That's why I think it's really important, where you can, is to do the chronology that you're doing with the child about their memories, get their voice, what they see, and maybe compare and contrast with the pieces of paper that you do get, because very often, as we've said, it is very different. Okay, any final points from anybody? Any other point that you want to raise? Anything you want to say? No? All right then. Thank you very much. It's been a really interesting session, and thank you to everybody who spoke. Jess, you didn't speak too much. It's really good having somebody that can spark things.
Thank you so much.
Otherwise, it's always me just waffling. So I need to hear back from you so that you can all hear from each other as well. So, Carol, thank you. Thank you, everybody who's come. And hopefully I'll get to see you at another session. DL, thank you. I haven't worked out how to do that yet. I need to learn some of these things, how to put those sort of little hands on. But it's been good working with you all, and I'll see you at another session. Bye-bye then, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank you. Bye bye.
you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.